to do a quick post today all about how the next generation are going to be shaping the future of society. And the core idea here is that there is something which I call the rise of the polymath, which, if you don't know, polymath is someone who has multiple skills. You know, think Da Vinci. A modern day polymath might be Kanye West. We'll probably skip past that. The key idea here, though, is that essentially the internet has made creativity a lot more accessible, and everyone is a creator in this sort of new age where Instagram and Facebook have basically turned this idea where you can document your whole life. We're almost growing up with a generation of presenters. I think I'm falling for that trap. This whole move towards this creative democratization is really creating a bit of a renaissance in some ways, and I think young people feel like they could probably do whatever they want right now. That might be due to the rise of websites like Wikipedia or YouTube, for example, which really give you the ability to learn whatever you want. You know, you can sort of go on an online course now, and if you want to have a basic understanding of quantum physics or WordPress, you could probably do both at the same time. And there's this interesting idea, I guess, where, you know, the background is division of labour really created this kind of approach where everyone focuses and specialises in what they want to do. And that roots back to, look at the back of a £20 note, you'll probably see it. You know, this idea of the pin factory and Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations. But we don't really want to talk about that. What I really want to think about is how young people now are almost more creative and more driven than any other generation has been. And you can see it just in the rise of how many young entrepreneurs there are, how many 16-year-old or 20-year-old kids want to start up their own tech platform and might even learn how to build it themselves. So this idea of a polymath, though, it's very common in the arts, you know, in fashion, in TV to some extent, in film. You need to have a wide understanding of the people you work with and how your role has an impact on them. And so that concept's always been quite common in the arts, but I think it's really important that brands and especially governments start thinking about what this move towards a polymath kind of mindset means for the future of society, and how government especially can start shaping the future curriculums to match this new move towards a much more broad, integrated mindset. And the first step has to be towards creating a more evolved curriculum. You know, we need to make sure that people are able to work within a range of different fields of study, and this idea of a cross-disciplinary approach is really at the core of all of this. You know, why is it that when you're 16 in the UK you have to choose what you're going to specialise in, and then a few years later you have to really focus? And a lot of young people just aren't ready to make that decision at that point. And so I think the future really has to be a bit broader, where education isn't necessarily so specialised, but it's about learning about the cross-disciplinary approach and how what you do in a physics course might also have massive implications to the tech scene or to even the music industry, for example. And I really think this approach towards a polymath mindset is how we're going to create more innovative products, but also how we're going to solve global problems. Because it is this mindset of looking outside of your field where you can really gain the most inspiration, and we'll be able to create ideas and solutions to problems that haven't necessarily been defined before. So when we combine ideas, I think that's when we get a really interesting new perspective. And I really want to challenge brands, governments, and even schools to start thinking about how they can create a more sort of polymath-driven curriculum where young people are actually inspired to learn a range of different things and actually figure out how to put these together and solve new problems with this approach. So, as you know, as I was saying earlier, the internet has really given rise to this new mindset, and we really have to think about how this is going to shape the future of society. And if the next generation are going to be polymaths, and it's clear that there's a lot of young people who are multi-talented now. I speak to so many young kids who they can make videos, they can make their own websites, they make music, they're interested in whatever they want to do really, and there's no kind of holding them back. And it's clear that the education system isn't really working for them. They learn most of their skills and find most of their interests outside of school. So we want to think about, and we want to challenge the next generation to start doing this more. And I think there's a big role for brands here. The curriculum takes a long time to change, and I think brands have an interesting role where they can actually help young people find their skills, find their passions a lot quicker than the school might be able to do. And they can actually create the platforms for the next generation to essentially excel much quicker. And you know, in the UK, for example, if you have to make a decision on what you want to specialise on by the time you get to uni, which a lot of people haven't even had the life experience to know what they want to do just yet, I think brands can play a very interesting role in this by making sure that they create the right experiences and platforms for young people at a very early age to just find their passion. So what we want to think about here is essentially how can we solve such interesting global problems, you know, whether it's climate change or whether it's poverty. Studying a math course on its own isn't going to help you even comprehend how you can solve such a problem. But if we start bringing these fields together, and if you start taking elements of ethics and elements of technology and then combining it all, I think there's going to be an interesting space where people start identifying ways to solve these problems quicker. And you know, I'll give you my best example is you take the music industry, you take technology, and then you take the problem of climate change, and what you get is an example like the sustainable dance floor, where essentially energy is generated by people in a club dancing. That's pretty visionary in its own right. And I think you're going to see more ideas like that coming to life, where people are going to start fusing together different fields of study. And I think it's up to the next generation and for us to give them the platform to actually start finding these ideas and start shaping the future through this approach, this fusion-driven approach. And I'm going to coin it the rise of the polymath, because that is essentially what we're seeing. A complete change and a renaissance in creativity. So let's challenge the governments and let's challenge the brands to actually start feeding young people with ideas that can inspire them, rather than concepts that are just driven in commercial ideas that will make them self-conscious and just driven by material things. I think that we need to start really shaping the future in a more interesting way.